So I am going to read to you what we have, or what I have, for delusions of freedom. Mass psychogenic illness, MPI, or mass psychosis, refers to the rapid spread of illness signs and symptoms affecting members of a cohesive group, originating from a nervous system disturbance involving excitation, loss or alteration of function, whereby physical complaints that are exhibited unconsciously have no corresponding organic etiology. And that's from the National Center for Biotechnology Information at the U.S. National Library of Medicine. Okay, that was a mouthful. So I just want to kind of read it one more time. All right. Mass psychogenic illness, MPI, or mass psychosis, refers to the rapid spread of illness signs and symptoms affecting members of a cohesive group, originating from a nervous system disturbance involving excitation, loss or alteration of function, whereby physical complaints that are exhibited unconsciously have no corresponding organic etiology. All right. So now I kind of want to get into race. And that's just one more time. As a verb, to compete with another or others to see who is fasting at covering a set course or achieving an objective. Now, what's an ism? Remember, when we're trying to figure out what a word means, even though the English language is like just a terrible ass language to learn in, try to go back to the etymology of the word and try to break down the word. So from race and ism, now what does ism mean? Ism is a distinctive practice, system, or philosophy, typically a political ideology or an artistic movement. So now when you put race and ism together, I think you can almost see where that distortion or deception comes from that Britannica touched on. This idea of race didn't even come up until Europeans in their conquest. They made it up. It did not exist before. They made it up, and they made it up for a very specific reason. I don't think I'll go there this at all, but let's just keep going. So then we talk about supremacy, white supremacy. All right. Well, let's just break down what supremacy is. The state or condition of being superior to all others in authority, power, and status. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's just keep going. So one of my favorite, what would you call him? Not a professor, a teacher, an educator. I don't want to call him a leader because I don't believe in leaders. And most black people that I speak to don't even know who Dr. Claude Anderson is. So I'll just call him a very smart, educated, intelligent, independent thinker who hasn't gotten the type of attention that he deserves, but we'll get there as well. But he describes racism as this.
I still got black folk today don't even know what racism is. They talk about it. Find me one that understands what racism is. Every time I ask him, what is racism? Well, Dr. Anderson, racism is not liking somebody. It's prejudice, it's bigotry, it's hatred. No, it's not. Racism is a competitive relationship between groups of people that are competing for the ownership and control of wealth and resources and power. That's what racism is. Racism is a group phenomenon. Racism is a team sport. You cannot participate in racism if you don't play as a team. You can't correct it. You're not even in the game. Racism is like football, basketball, and baseball. You play as a team or you lose. And I got all these so-called educated blacks in America on TV, heading up civil rights organizations, getting elected to public office. Don't you understand what racism is? That's why they don't do anything. They go there and tell you, well, I'm in a public office now, I'm a mayor or governor. My thing is to make sure everybody get along. That's not affecting racism. Nobody.
I didn't put this here because of how much I like Dr. Claude Anderson. I put this here because of how accurate it is. So I'm going to read it one more time. Racism is the competitive relationship between groups of people who are competing for the ownership and control of resources, wealth, and power. Racism is a group phenomenon. It is a team sport. Remember, group psychology. And he made a point to note that racism is a group phenomenon, and that's true. I don't want to go too far ahead, but one white person on their own cannot be a racist. They don't have that group backing. They don't have that network. They can be a bigot, they can be prejudiced, or they can just be an asshole. But one white person singular cannot be racist. And if you think that they can, then you do not understand what racism is. But let's keep moving. Now, based on what I know, and again, season 2, I'll dive deeper, but I want to steer clear of what racism is because it's just too complex to try to get to with what we're doing here. But I define racism as a social psychological construct created through the perversion of language to divide humanity for the benefit of otherworld parasites. Read it one more time. As defined by me. Racism is a social psychological construct created through the perversion of language to divide humanity for the benefit of other world parasites. What I'm saying and what the Britannica said as far as how racism or the idea of race was even created is in parallel. It's in parallel. But the perversion of language and parasites who are not from this world are at the center of racism. But that's as much as I'm going to touch on. I don't want to go any further as far as what racism really is. This is not about racism. I'm going to read the last bit that I have on this page, and I'm going to go into just a few slides about mental illness and what a psychosis is by definition. And then we're going to wrap it up. So remember, I went through some shit. And I don't mean the type of shit you go through as any type of human being in life. I don't even mean the shit that you might go through because you're black. I discovered something else. And this thing that I experienced, this knowledge that I gained, what was revealed to me, it made my soul cry. So as I read this to you, even though everything I said still applies today, please understand the emotional charge that was present when I wrote this is no longer present, but it's still true and accurate. All right. Both definitions are correct. They are truths in parallel. White supremacy is not real. It is a construct. There is no Caucasian or group of Caucasians on earth that are supreme to any natural melanated being in any capacity. What you say is what you think. What you think is what you believe. Your beliefs manifest your behaviors. If you believe that someone or something is supreme to you, you will subconsciously behave from a place of inferiority. I will not romanticize the plight of Black America. No part of our struggle is beautiful. It didn't even exist in our natural creation and isn't natural. The ghetto is not beautiful. If it were, the Jews wouldn't have left it for Dumbo. Dumbo. Should I trade my triumphs for your tragedy? My blessings for your burdens? My hard work for your hard life? We traded our pyramids for their Greek houses. We gave up ownership for access. We left our thrones for a seat at their table. We entertain reparations instead of seeking retribution. We assimilate into their cultures of sameness, expecting a different result. When did trauma, poverty, and neediness become synonymous with blackness? We've become addicted to trauma and accustomed to being at the mercy of our murderers. Depression is rage turned inward. That depression, coupled with ritualistic abuse, has festered into a mass psychosis of the African in America. We have been conditioned to function through our dissonance and delusions of freedom. Can y'all tell I felt the way when I wrote that? And I actually think it might be important that I read it one more time. And yeah, I want to read it one more time, so bear with me. Both definitions of racism that were mentioned before are correct. They are truths in parallel. White supremacy is not real. It's a construct. There is no Caucasian or group of Caucasians on earth that are supreme to any naturally melanated being in any capacity. What you say is what you think. What you think is what you believe. Your beliefs manifest your behaviors. If you believe that someone or something is supreme to you, you will subconsciously behave from a place of inferiority. I will not romanticize the plight of Black America. No part of our struggle is beautiful. It's not even natural and didn't exist in our original creation. The ghetto is not beautiful. If it were, the Jews wouldn't have left it for Dumbo. Dumbo. Should I trade my triumphs for your tragedy, my blessings for your burdens, my hard work for your hard life? We traded our pyramids for their Greek houses. We gave up ownership for access. We left our thrones for a seat at their table. We entertained reparations instead of seeking retribution. We assimilate into their cultures of sameness, expecting a different result. When did trauma, poverty, and neediness become synonymous with Blackness? We become addicted to trauma and accustomed to being at the mercy of our murderers. Depression is rage turned inward. That depression, coupled with ritualistic abuse, has festered into a mass psychosis of the African in America. We have been conditioned to function through our dissonance and delusions of freedom. All right. I was on one when I wrote that. As we go through this sleep stage, I'll be sharing more and more of what I encountered and some of the events that transpired that drove me to anger. Anger and rage I've never felt before or since. I've never had my soul cry like that. I've never had my soul collapse through what I found. As I entered the space of philanthropy, I wanted to believe what Black people were telling me. I wanted to believe that white people were the problem. I wanted to believe what Black people told me about the problem, and I found out something different. And what I found out is really what this is about. Okay, so this isn't about racism. If anything, this is more about classism, because classism has affected me way more than racism ever has. This is not about racism. This is about in-group, out-group bias and what happens when a person subscribes to a group psychology, a hive mind, a collective consciousness. When a person goes through a de-individuation process and they are no longer the individual who can think an independent thought. This is what happens when people assimilate into groups to get ahead, not realizing exactly what they're getting into. And this is what happens when you break away from a group. Okay? So again, if you came here for racism or trauma or any sad stories, you will not find them. That's those other guys. They get paid to do that. I don't. Okay? That's not why the All That Is has me here. The All That Is has me here to tell you something a little bit different.